Never imagined that speaking the truth would cost me my career, yet there I was, standing in that suffocating boardroom watching my CEO's face turn red with rage. Gideon Marks slammed his palm on the glass table, the sound echoing like a gunshot. "Your insight is irrelevant here, Claire," he spat, his voice dripping with contempt. I had just finished presenting my concerns about the company's new growth strategy, pointing out the glaring flaws that could cost us millions. Instead of listening, he made an example of me. My colleagues avoided my eyes, their silence more painful than Gideon's words. Within minutes, I was escorted out by security, my company badge confiscated, my laptop wiped clean. I walked through that marble lobby clutching my personal bag, my heart hammering against my ribs. The glass doors closed behind me with a final, decisive click. Standing on the sidewalk, I stared back at the towering building where I had poured 3 years of my life. Betrayal burned in my chest, but beneath it, something else simmered, a cold, focused fury. They had no idea what they had just unleashed. Just 6 weeks earlier, everything had been different. I remembered standing in the same boardroom, presenting a campaign that saved the company $2 million. Gideon had actually smiled then, raising his coffee cup in my direction. "This is exactly the kind of thinking we need," he had said. My team congratulated me afterward, and Marcus, our senior strategist, pulled me aside. "You're going places, Claire," he told me, his weathered face creasing with genuine pride. "Keep this up and you'll be running your own division soon." I had believed him. I worked 70-hour weeks, missed birthdays and dinners, sacrificed sleep to perfect every presentation. My apartment became a second office, my social life non-existent. But it felt worth it. I was climbing that corporate ladder, earning respect with every successful pitch. My colleagues sought my advice. Junior staff asked me to mentor them. I had finally found my place, my purpose. Looking back now, I realized how naive I had been. Success only mattered when it didn't challenge the wrong person. The news of my firing spread through the office like wildfire. By evening, my phone buzzed with cautious texts. "Are you okay?" my friend Bethany wrote. "I can't believe Gideon did that to you." But when I suggested meeting for coffee, she went silent. No one wanted to be associated with the woman who had challenged the CEO. I understood their fear. Speaking up for me meant risking their own positions. Still, the silence stung. Marcus, who had mentored me for 2 years, sent a brief message. "Sorry about what happened. Best of luck." That was it. No phone call, no explanation, just those empty words. I sat in my apartment that night, scrolling through the group chat that had once been filled with inside jokes and weekend plans. Now it was silent. They had already erased me, moving on as if I had never existed. The betrayal cut deeper than the firing itself. I had thought we were a team, a family even. But loyalty, I learned, was just another corporate illusion that vanished the moment it became inconvenient. That first night without a job stretched endlessly. I lay awake staring at my ceiling, calculating how many months of rent I could afford with my savings. 3, maybe 4 if I was careful. My student loans still loomed, monthly payments that wouldn't pause for unemployment. Panic clawed at my throat. I had worked so hard to build my career, to prove I belonged in those boardrooms. Now I was back to square one, worse even because I had been publicly humiliated. Doubt whispered cruel questions in the darkness. Had I been wrong to speak up? Should I have stayed quiet, played it safe? But then I remembered Gideon's strategy, the reckless expansion that ignored market research and customer data. I had been right. My analysis had been solid, my concerns valid. Firing me didn't change that. As dawn broke through my window, something shifted inside me. I sat up, my jaw set with new determination. They wanted me to disappear quietly, to fade into obscurity. Instead, I would come back stronger. I would prove that competence mattered more than ego, that integrity could triumph over arrogance. This wasn't over. It had only just begun. I spent the next week applying to every firm I could find, reaching out to old contacts, attending networking events I would have normally skipped. My resume was strong, my track record solid, but my recent firing cast a shadow over everything. Interviewers asked pointed questions. Why did you leave your previous position? I learned to answer carefully, focusing on seeking new challenges rather than dwelling on the conflict. The rejections came swiftly. We've decided to pursue other candidates. Your qualifications are impressive, but we're looking for someone with a different background. Each email felt like another door slamming shut. Then, on a rainy Thursday afternoon, my phone rang. Claire Rodriguez? A smooth voice asked. This is Nathan Cross from Edgefield Consulting. I reviewed your portfolio, and I'm impressed. We have an opening that might interest you. My heart raced. Edgefield was one of Gideon's main competitors, known for aggressive tactics and winning high-profile clients. Nathan continued, I should mention, we're currently competing for a major contract that your former company is also pursuing. Would that be a problem? I smiled for the first time in days. No problem at all. Starting at Edgefield felt like stepping into enemy territory, but in the best possible way. My first week involved meetings, introductions, and getting familiar with their current projects. I kept my head down, absorbing information like a sponge. Nathan assigned me to shadow their strategic planning team, observing how they approached client pitches. During lunch breaks, I reviewed everything I knew about Gideon's company, their past deals, typical strategies, weaknesses they consistently ignored. I made notes in a private journal, connecting dots that others might miss. Gideon's fatal flaw was his ego. He believed his instincts trumped data, his charisma more valuable than research. It made him bold, but also predictable. I began forming alliances carefully, offering help to colleagues who seemed overwhelmed or undervalued. Jessica, a talented analyst who rarely got credit for her work, appreciated my genuine interest in her insights. Thomas, a junior consultant passed over for promotion, opened up about the company's internal politics. I wasn't just learning the business. I was building a network of allies who understood what it meant to be overlooked. By the end of my second week, I had a clear picture of how Edgefield operated and, more importantly, how I could help them win. My first real contribution came during a team meeting about a mid-sized client considering switching vendors. The discussion had stalled, everyone repeating the same tired approaches. I raised my hand hesitantly. What if we focused on their customer retention problem? I suggested. Their current provider doesn't offer integrated analytics. We could pitch a solution that addresses that specific pain point. Nathan leaned forward interested. Go on. I outlined a framework I had developed in my previous role, tailored specifically to this client's industry. The room went quiet, then Jessica nodded enthusiastically. That's brilliant, Claire. It targets exactly what they need. We refined the pitch over the next 3 days, and I presented it to the client the following week. They signed the contract that afternoon. Nathan clapped my shoulder afterward. That's the kind of thinking that wins deals, he said. But as I returned to my desk, I noticed an unfamiliar email in my inbox. The subject line read, Interesting career move. The message was blank except for a link to an article about my firing from Gideon's company. Someone was watching me, reminding me that my past wasn't as buried as I hoped. I deleted it, but the unease lingered. Not everyone at Edgefield welcomed my success. Tyler, a senior consultant who had been with the company for 5 years, began making subtle comments during meetings. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, he would say when I proposed ideas. Some of us have been doing this for a while. I recognized the tactic immediately, undermining me without direct confrontation, planting seeds of doubt about my experience. Instead of fighting back, I adjusted my strategy. During the next team presentation, I made sure to publicly credit Tyler for a minor suggestion he had made earlier, framing it as crucial to the overall approach. Tyler's insight about timing really helped shape this proposal, I said, meeting his eyes. The team applauded, and Tyler looked momentarily confused, then pleased. After the meeting, I approached him directly. I appreciate your perspective, I told him honestly. I know I'm new here, and I have a lot to learn from people with your experience. It wasn't manipulation. I genuinely respected his years in the industry. Tyler's defensiveness softened. You're doing good work, he admitted grudgingly. Just don't try to change everything overnight. I nodded. By acknowledging his expertise rather than threatening it, I had turned a potential enemy into a neutral colleague. Small victories mattered as much as big ones. 3 weeks into my new role, I attended an industry conference downtown. The ballroom buzzed with networking energy, business cards exchanged like currency. I was refilling my coffee when a familiar face approached, Harold Pemberton, a former client of Gideon's company. "Claire Rodriguez," he said warmly, shaking my hand. "I heard you moved to Edgefield. Smart choice." We found a quiet corner to talk, and Harold didn't waste time with pleasantries. "I'll be honest with you," he said, lowering his voice. "I've been dissatisfied with Gideon's team for months. They overpromise and underdeliver, then blame us when things go wrong. The arrogance is exhausting." I listened carefully, asking thoughtful questions without pushing too hard. Harold continued, his new strategy, the one he's betting everything on, it's reckless. I tried raising concerns, but Gideon dismissed them. "Sound familiar?" I smiled wryly. "Very familiar." Before we parted, Harold handed me his card. "If Edgefield ever wants to discuss a partnership, call me. I'd welcome a conversation with someone who actually listens." Walking back to the office, I felt the pieces aligning. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about proving that competence and integrity could win in a world that often rewarded neither. The turning point came during a Monday morning all-hands meeting. Nathan stood at the front of the conference room, his expression serious. "We have an opportunity," he announced. "The Caldwell account, biggest deal of the quarter, potentially worth $15 million over 3 years. They're evaluating proposals from multiple firms, including our competitors." My pulse quickened. I knew exactly which competitor he meant. Gideon's company had been pursuing Caldwell for months, positioning it as their flagship victory. Nathan continued, "This won't be easy. We need our best strategy, our sharpest pitch. I'm forming a dedicated team." As he listed names, mine wasn't among them. Disappointment flooded through me. I was still too new, too untested for something this important. But after the meeting, Nathan pulled me aside. "I didn't mention you publicly because I need you for something else," he said quietly. "I want you to analyze our competitors' likely approaches. What would Gideon pitch? Where are his blind spots?" I understood immediately. My insider knowledge was valuable, maybe more valuable than being on the official team. "I can do that," I said. Nathan smiled. "I thought you might. This is your chance, Claire. Help us win this, and you'll have proven yourself beyond any doubt." Meanwhile, back at Gideon's company, he was celebrating prematurely. I learned this through Bethany, who finally worked up the courage to call me. "He's impossible," she whispered, clearly calling from a bathroom or empty office. "He keeps talking about the Caldwell deal like it's already won. In last week's meeting, he actually laughed about you working at Edgefield. Said you'd flounder trying to compete with real professionals." Her words stung, but they also fueled my determination. "He mentioned you specifically?" I asked. "Oh yes. He said firing you was the best decision he ever made, that you'd be a cautionary tale about knowing your place." Bethany paused. "Claire, I'm sorry I didn't speak up for you. I was scared." "I know," I said gently. "I don't blame you." After we hung up, I sat at my desk replaying Gideon's mockery. He thought I was finished, that I would disappear into obscurity. His arrogance was blinding him to reality. He had no idea I was now part of the team working to destroy his biggest deal. And his assumption that I would fail? That would be his fatal mistake. I pulled out my notes and began mapping every strategy Gideon typically employed, every shortcut he took, every client concern he usually dismissed. This analysis would be my weapon. I worked late into the night, building a comprehensive profile of how Gideon would approach Caldwell. He loved flashy presentations with minimal substance, relying on charm and confidence rather than detailed planning. He would promise aggressive timelines and dramatic results, downplaying risks and complications. Most importantly, he would focus entirely on growth metrics while ignoring operational sustainability, the same flaw I had tried to warn him about in that fatal boardroom meeting. I compiled my findings into a presentation for Nathan and the team. 3 days later, I stood before them in a smaller conference room, my laptop connected to the projector. Gideon will pitch expansion at any cost, I explained, clicking through slides filled with data and past examples. He'll dazzle them with projections, but won't address infrastructure needs or market volatility. That's our opening. Jessica asked, how do we counter that without seeming overly cautious? We don't compete on flash, I replied. We compete on reliability. We show Caldwell a sustainable path that protects their investment while still delivering growth. We address every risk Gideon ignores and position ourselves as the smart choice, not just the bold one. Nathan nodded slowly. It's good, Claire. Really good. I want you to help draft the preliminary pitch. My heart soared, but I kept my expression professional. This was it, my first real chance to prove I belonged. Word traveled fast. Within days, Gideon learned I was now directly competing against him. I discovered this through an industry newsletter that quoted him dismissing Edgefield's chances. They've hired some of our former staff, he was quoted as saying, but that doesn't mean they understand how to win at this level. Claire Rodriguez won't make a dent in our strategy. She couldn't handle the pressure here, and she certainly can't handle it there. The quote was calculated, designed to undermine my credibility publicly. Some people might have been intimidated. Instead, I felt liberated. He had made this personal, which meant I could stop pretending it wasn't. I doubled down on my work, spending weekends refining our pitch, stress testing every assumption, identifying backup plans for potential objections. Jessica joined me several evenings, bringing takeout and contributing her analytical skills. You're really going after him, aren't you? She observed one night, watching me reorganize our presentation for the dozenth time. I'm going after the truth, I corrected. Gideon just happens to be standing in the way of it. She smiled. Either way, I'm glad you're on our team. As we worked, I felt the momentum building. Gideon could mock me all he wanted, but actions mattered more than words. And I was preparing actions that would speak volumes. Our preliminary outreach to Caldwell's leadership yielded promising responses. I had suggested we start with lower-level stakeholders, the operations managers and department heads who would actually implement whatever strategy Caldwell chose. While Gideon focused on schmoozing executives, we were building grassroots support among the people who mattered most. I personally met with Caldwell's operations director, a sharp woman named Victoria, who had clearly been burned by over-promising vendors before. I appreciate your focus on practical implementation, she told me after I walked her through our phased approach. Too many consultants sell us dreams without considering the reality on the ground. That's because they're not the ones who have to make it work, I replied. You are. Our job is to support you, not complicate your life. Victoria's endorsement carried weight, and soon other Caldwell managers were requesting meetings. Each conversation revealed new concerns, new priorities that Gideon's team was almost certainly overlooking. I documented everything, building a proposal that addressed real needs rather than assumed ones. But not everyone was convinced. Caldwell's CFO remained skeptical, preferring vendors with longer track records. And Gideon, sensing our momentum, began spreading rumors designed to cast doubt on Edgefield's capabilities. The competition was intensifying, and the real battle was still ahead. Then came the curveball. Nathan called an emergency meeting, his expression grave. Caldwell's board is nervous, he announced. They're questioning whether we can handle a project this size. Apparently, someone has been feeding them concerns about Edgefield's capacity. We all knew who that someone was. Tyler swore under his breath. Jessica looked at me, worried. But Nathan continued. They've asked for a revised proposal addressing their concerns about our infrastructure and support systems. We have 72 hours. The room erupted in stress. 72 hours to overhaul a presentation we had spent weeks perfecting. It felt impossible. But as everyone panicked, I felt oddly calm. This was exactly the kind of challenge I thrived on, the impossible deadline, the need to adapt under pressure. We can do this, I said firmly. Nathan turned to me. You sound confident. Because we already have most of what we need, I explained. We just need to reorganize and emphasize different aspects. Jessica, you have the infrastructure data, right? She nodded. Then let's restructure around that. We'll show them exactly how we scale, with specific examples and contingency plans. We'll make our capacity the strength, not the question. Nathan studied me for a moment, then smiled. All right, Claire, you're leading this revision. Everyone else, you report to her. Let's make it happen. The next 72 hours blurred into a marathon of coffee, spreadsheets, and frantic collaboration. I barely slept, catnapping at my desk between revision cycles. Jessica worked alongside me, her analytical skills proving invaluable. Tyler, surprisingly, stepped up too, contributing his deep knowledge of past projects. By the deadline, we had transformed our proposal into something stronger than before, a comprehensive plan that didn't just answer Caldwell's questions, but anticipated concerns they hadn't even raised yet. The presentation felt solid, unshakable. Nathan reviewed it the morning of our pitch, his eyes scanning each slide carefully. When he finished, he looked up at me. This is exceptional work, Claire. No matter what happens, you should be proud. Standing before Caldwell's board later that day, I felt none of the nervousness from that disastrous meeting with Gideon. This time, I wasn't speaking truth to someone who didn't want to hear it. I was speaking to people genuinely interested in finding the best solution. I walked them through our infrastructure, our support systems, our track record of successful scaling. I addressed their concerns directly, without defensiveness or ego. When I finished, the room was silent for a moment. Then Victoria, the operations director, smiled. Now that's what I call a thorough response. The board thanked us professionally, revealing nothing about their decision. But as we left, I felt cautiously optimistic. We had done everything right. Now we could only wait. Gideon didn't take our strong presentation well. Within hours, he launched a desperate counteroffensive, suddenly offering Caldwell aggressive discounts and expedited timelines. His new proposal arrived at Caldwell's office the next morning, undercutting our pricing by 15% and promising completion 2 months faster than we had projected. Nathan was furious. He's buying the contract, he said, pacing his office. He's willing to lose money just to keep us from winning. I studied Gideon's revised proposal, noting the impossible timelines and razor-thin margins. He can't deliver this, I said slowly. The math doesn't work. Those timelines require twice the staff he has available, and at these prices, he'll be operating at a loss. But will Caldwell see that? Nathan challenged. I bit my lip, thinking. We could respond by lowering our own prices, getting into a destructive bidding war. Or we could trust that Caldwell's leadership was smart enough to see through Gideon's desperation. We should send them an analysis, I suggested. Not attacking Gideon directly, but highlighting the realistic requirements for a project this scope. Let them draw their own conclusions about whose numbers are credible. Nathan considered this. That's risky. We might seem like we're bad-mouthing competitors. Or we might seem like the only vendor being honest with them, I countered. He nodded slowly. All right, draft it. But keep it professional and factual. As I worked on the analysis that evening, my phone buzzed with an unexpected call from Harold Pemberton. Claire, I heard about Gideon's latest move, he said without preamble. I wanted to give you some information that might help. He proceeded to tell me about a similar situation 6 months earlier when Gideon had made impossible promises to another client. He delivered 3 months late and 20% over budget, Harold explained. The client threatened legal action, and Gideon's company had to eat massive costs to avoid a lawsuit. It nearly destroyed their reputation in that sector. This was exactly the kind of evidence I needed, but using it felt dangerous. Harold, I appreciate this, but I can't include specific incidents in our analysis. It would seem vindictive. I'm not asking you to, Harold replied, but I am planning to call Caldwell's CEO myself. We're old friends, and he deserves to know what he's walking into. Consider it my good deed for the quarter. After we hung up, I stared at my phone, amazed. Gideon's past arrogance was catching up with him through channels I hadn't even activated. His reputation, which he valued so highly, was now working against him. I finished the analysis carefully, focusing purely on industry standards and realistic project requirements. No personal attacks, no specific accusations, just cold, hard facts about what successful implementations actually required. When I sent it to Nathan, he forwarded it to Caldwell immediately with a note. We believe in transparency, even when it's uncomfortable. These are the realities of complex projects. Gideon's response was predictable and ugly. The next morning, an article appeared in a business publication questioning my professional competence. Former employees with short tenures shouldn't be trusted with major strategic decisions. An unnamed source, obviously Gideon, was quoted as saying. The article referenced my firing, spinning it as performance-related rather than a difference in strategy. It stung reading those lies printed as fact. Several colleagues sent me concerned messages. My mother called, worried. Is this true, Claire? Were you really fired for poor performance? I explained a real story, but the damage was spreading. Doubt was a powerful weapon, and Gideon wielded it expertly. That afternoon, I drafted a careful response, factual and measured, correcting the record without seeming defensive. Nathan approved it, and we sent it to Caldwell directly, along with my actual performance reviews from my previous role, all excellent until the day I was fired for questioning Gideon's strategy. I believe in addressing concerns directly, I wrote. My firing resulted from a strategic disagreement, not performance issues. My work speaks for itself, and I'm confident Caldwell's leadership can evaluate vendors based on merit rather than mudslinging. It was a calculated risk, being this transparent. But I was betting that honesty would resonate more than Gideon's increasingly desperate attacks. 24 hours later, Victoria from Caldwell called me personally. I appreciated your response, she said simply. It takes courage to be that forthcoming. Those words felt like a small victory in an increasingly bitter war. Behind the scenes, Gideon intensified his campaign. He contacted mutual industry connections, spreading stories about my supposed incompetence. He insinuated that I had been fired for ethical violations, that I couldn't work well with teams, that I was difficult and unreliable. Each rumor was carefully crafted to sound plausible, without being specific enough to refute directly. I heard about these attacks through various channels, former colleagues who remained friendly, industry contacts who questioned the narratives, even a few people who admitted they had been approached by Gideon to share concerns about me. It would have been crushing if I hadn't anticipated it. Instead, I responded methodically. For every person who contacted me with questions, I provided documentation, emails praising my work, successful project outcomes, testimonials from satisfied clients. I didn't badmouth Gideon in return. I simply presented evidence of my competence and let people draw their own conclusions. Gradually, the tide began shifting. Industry insiders started questioning why Gideon was so focused on attacking a competitor rather than letting his own work speak for itself. His desperation became obvious, and desperation never looked good in business. Meanwhile, our proposal with Caldwell was advancing to final review. They had narrowed their choice to 2 vendors, us and Gideon's company. The decision would come within days. Everything I had worked for over the past quarter hung in the balance, and there was nothing left to do but wait. Nathan called me into his office on a Wednesday morning. His expression was unreadable. Caldwell wants to meet with us tomorrow, he said. Final presentation before they make their decision. My heart raced. Both vendors. Yes. Sequential presentations, 30 minutes each. They'll decide by Friday. I nodded, mind already racing through last-minute preparations. But Nathan held up a hand. Claire, they specifically asked that you lead our presentation. The weight of that request settled over me. Caldwell wanted to see me directly, to evaluate whether I could be trusted with their business. It was the ultimate test of everything I had rebuilt since being fired. I'll need to revise our deck, I said, already planning. No, Nathan interrupted. Use what we have. They don't want new material. They want to see you present it, to judge your competence firsthand. This is about trust, not information. He was right. Gideon had planted enough doubt that Caldwell needed to evaluate me personally. Fair enough, I would show them exactly who I was. That night, I rehearsed the presentation a dozen times, not to memorize it but to internalize it so completely that I could deliver it naturally, answering any question that arose. By morning, I felt ready. As I dressed for the meeting, I caught my reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back looked different from the one who had been escorted out of Gideon's building 3 months ago. Stronger, sharper, more certain. That woman had been devastated. This woman was dangerous. The presentation felt like walking into an execution. Caldwell's entire board sat arrayed before us, their expressions neutral and unreadable. I recognized some faces from previous meetings, but others were new, higher-level executives whose presence indicated how seriously they took this decision. Nathan introduced me briefly, then stepped aside. I was on my own. "Thank you for this opportunity," I began, my voice steady. "I know there have been questions about my background and capabilities. I welcome those questions, and I'm here to address them directly." I proceeded through our proposal, methodically explaining each component, answering objections before they were raised, demonstrating my deep understanding of both their needs and our solutions. Halfway through, Caldwell's CFO interrupted. "Ms. Rodriguez, your former employer has raised concerns about your ability to handle pressure. How do you respond?" The room went silent. This was the moment Gideon had been engineering, the public referendum on my competence. I met the CFO's eyes directly. I was fired for questioning a flawed strategy that I believed would harm my former company. That decision required me to prioritize truth over job security. I stand by it. I continued. As for handling pressure, I've spent the last quarter competing against a former employer with significantly more resources, while building credibility at a new firm and delivering results despite active attempts to undermine me. I'd say I handle pressure quite well. Several board members smiled. The CFO nodded, satisfied. The presentation concluded with polite applause. Nathan and I gathered our materials, preparing to leave, when Caldwell's CEO held up a hand. "Actually, before you go, we have one concern." My stomach dropped. After everything, there was still an obstacle. "Your proposed budget includes a contingency fund that seems excessive," the CEO continued. 20% above projected costs. That's significantly higher than your competitor's proposal. I glanced at Nathan, whose expression revealed his worry. This was it, the final hurdle. If we lost the deal over budget concerns, everything I had worked for would collapse. But then I remembered why we had included that contingency in the first place. "You're right," I said calmly. "It is higher than Gideon Marks's proposal. That's because his numbers are unrealistic. Projects of this complexity inevitably encounter unexpected challenges, vendor delays, integration issues, market changes. Our contingency fund ensures those challenges don't derail your timeline or force you to absorb additional costs." I pulled up a slide we had prepared but hadn't planned to use. This shows data from 50 similar projects over the past 5 years. On average, they required 18% additional budget beyond initial projections. We're not padding our numbers. We're being honest about realistic costs. The question isn't whether you'll need that contingency. The question is whether you want to plan for it now or scramble for it later. The room was silent. Then Caldwell's CEO smiled. "That's the kind of transparency we appreciate." Friday morning arrived with agonizing slowness. I tried focusing on other projects, but my attention kept drifting to my phone, waiting for Nathan's call. At 10:47 a.m., it finally rang. "Claire, come to my office. Now." His tone was impossible to read. I walked through the hallway on shaking legs, preparing myself for either outcome. Nathan's door was closed. I knocked once and entered. He sat behind his desk, his expression serious. My heart sank. This was bad news. Then his face broke into a massive grin. "We won." The words didn't register immediately. "What?" "Caldwell chose us. The contract is ours, $15 million over 3 years, with options for renewal. They just called." Joy exploded through my chest. I actually laughed, a sound of pure relief and triumph. "They specifically mentioned you," Nathan continued. "Said your presentation demonstrated exactly the kind of competence and integrity they wanted in a partner. Victoria told me personally that you were the deciding factor." I sank into a chair, overwhelmed. 3 months ago, I had been fired and humiliated. Now I had just secured the biggest deal of the quarter, defeating the man who had tried to destroy my career. "There's more," Nathan said. "Gideon's board is furious. He promised them this contract, staked his reputation on it. Losing it to us, to you specifically, has caused serious problems for him. I should have felt vindictive satisfaction, but instead I felt something quieter and more profound. Validation. I had been right all along, and now everyone knew it. The news spread quickly through business circles. By Monday, industry publications were covering the story, not just the deal itself, but the dramatic competition behind it. Several articles mentioned my firing and comeback, framing it as a David versus Goliath narrative. Nathan promoted me to senior strategist with a significant raise and equity in the company. More importantly, I had earned the respect of my colleagues. Even Tyler approached me after the announcement, extending his hand. "You proved yourself," he said simply. "Welcome to the team." But the most satisfying moment came 2 weeks later when my phone rang with an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won.
"Claire Rodriguez," I said.
There was a pause, then Gideon's voice, stripped of its usual arrogance.
"Claire."
"It's Gideon Marks." I waited, saying nothing. "I'm calling because we're restructuring our strategic approach," he continued, each word clearly painful. "Your work on the Caldwell pitch was impressive. I was wondering if you might be willing to consult with us, help us refine our methodology." The audacity took my breath away. After everything he had done, firing me, mocking me, trying to destroy my reputation, he now wanted my help. "No," I said simply. "But Gideon, I'll give you one piece of free advice. Maybe listen when people question your strategies.
You might learn something."
I hung up before he could respond. Walking out of the office that evening, I passed the glass building where I had once worked. It looked smaller somehow, less intimidating. I thought about the woman who had walked out those doors 3 months ago, devastated and doubting herself. I wished I could tell her that everything would work out better than she imagined, that her integrity would prove more valuable than any job security, that speaking truth would ultimately set her free. But she would find out soon enough. I smiled and kept walking toward whatever came next, knowing I could handle it. After all, I had already survived the worst they could do to me. Everything else was just another challenge to overcome, another story to tell about the day I chose truth over compliance, integrity over comfort, and won.